Welcome back, Honors. All right, so happy Sunday. Trying to get this thing up before noon, so you have ample enough time to get it done. It is not going to be very long. All we're doing is talking about Philip II of Spain, his borderline fugazi marriage to Mary Tudor, and then also just kind of continuing to roll forward and talk about their decline, right? So now, anyway, Philip II is going to turn around and marry Bloody Mary, right? Now, the big thing about the relationship between Mary Tudor and Philip II was that there was pretty much only one-sided attraction in this entire marriage. So when they got married, Mary was much, much older than Philip, right? So probably, I think she was her late, late 30s. And I think he was in his early 20s. And with this entire concept, she was 37. She was phenomenally attracted to him. However, he was not attracted to her whatsoever, right? So he actually refused to live in England with her. They never had kids. He cheated on her constantly. She also wanted to have his child, but apparently, had a lot of different issues conceiving, and then also possibly had a phantom pregnancy as well. A lot of very, very sad stuff. But eventually she will die childless, making it so Philip loses the throne of England, right? So after marrying Bloody Mary, he was the king of both England, Spain, Portugal, the New World, and the Netherlands. Then when she dies, he loses England and all the colonies that go along with that as well. So he becomes irate, becomes furious, right? Turns around and is very, very upset just because the parliament refused to let him still be king, right? Because the Third Succession Act then passed the throne onto Elizabeth. Because is the parliament and the Constitution and the Magna Carta, thank you, going to allow a non-English individual to be the king of England? No way. So he absolutely hates Elizabeth. Because she's an avid Protestant, right? Because she is refusing to take on the Catholic doctrine. So he also then turned around, proposed to Elizabeth, and then she rejected him, which is hilarious. Then that's going to lead to a very, very, very large engagement known famously as the Spanish Armada, right? So Philip, following this failed attempt to reconcile with Elizabeth after she refuses to marry him, attempts to invade England with a fleet of 130 Spanish galleons, right? So the English are vastly outnumbered in this situation. A lot of this due to the fact that their navy had not grown to be the dominant power that it was at the time. Many of their boats were known as sloops. They were actually smaller vessels that would actually, they were quicker and lighter in the water, right? Used more for trade, actually. And then not to mention the fact, too, that they just had never been in full attack mode when it came to their navy, right? But Spain at the time was very, very powerful and had a huge navy. So the English, though, even though they were outnumbered, got very, very lucky and won the Spanish Armada due to these things called fire ships and just a little bit extra luck. That right there is Elizabeth's portrait. But let's talk about what happened, all right? So what it was is the luck in the fire ships. Fire ships was an old tactic used by the man Sir Francis Drake and suggested to Elizabeth by Sir Francis Drake, the privateer, as she called him. He was a pirate. She was into it. They're old vessels that were set ablaze and launched directly at enemy vessels. I don't know about y'all, but if I saw a giant flaming boat coming at me, I'd be pretty freaked out, right? Now, the luck aspect of what I'm getting at is after losing several major engagements in the English Channel to the English themselves because of fire ships, because of tactile use of terrain, using of coves, the lighter English vessels surrounding the galleons and actually destroying them. Philip has the idea, we'll sail around the backside of England, show up in Ireland, get off in Ireland, recruit a new army of Catholics because the English have been so mean to them for years and years and years, and then we'll invade England on the land. Well, when they were on the backside of Ireland, they got hit by a ridiculous amount of storms, and it actually destroyed like a large amount of the Spanish vessels. Only 1 out of every 3 boats returned to Spain. Womp, 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 womp. Now, even after this, though, so the Spanish Armada is a major event showing the limit of Spanish power, and they are going to begin to decline after the loss to England. However, they did go through a golden age of art and literature in the Empire of Spain during the period of great financial gain, right? They had huge amounts of money coming in through the colonies, right? And a couple of these different things can actually be seen in a lot of the three very famous people: Greco, Velasquez, and then the writer Cervantes, right? So Greco, first of all, reintroduced borderline Renaissance-esque themes, right? He took like Baroque themes of major religious value and integrated them in with, kind of a darker toned Renaissance-esque type of painting and frescoist, right? So very, very intense right here. I believe this is the portrait of the death of Charles V, right? And the actual death, not the fake death this time, and his ascension into heaven, right? So that's a Greco piece. But then you have Velasquez, which is a more realist painter trying to display and show the different qualities of the figures, and he's a lot less traditionalist, right? This one's called, it's Spanish, meaning like the small. I gotta look it up real quick. Velasquez painting. Oh, yes, Los Meninas, all right? This is Los Meninas, and Los Meninas is actually showing, it's a unification picture of, it's like an enigmatic composition, raises a lot of questions about the reality behind the painting, right? Because here's the ultimate irony. This, in the background, is supposed to be the painting. It's 2 Habsburgs being painted together as a married couple. Well, since they're related, this is going to lead to a lot of issues genetically speaking and things like that. But instead of just painting them, Velasquez decided to put them in the background and painted himself painting them, right? And these are their children that are actually, these are 2 maids, these are their children actually displayed in the forefront, right? Trying to show the reality behind the painting instead of just the painting itself. It's very, very, very awesome painting. I'm always been a big fan of it. Then you've got, let's back up. Then you've got Cervantes, the writer of Don Quixote, or as many like to call him, Don Quixote. Which is completely false and not correct. I just think it's funny because it's got an X in it. Which is supposed to be a writing. This story has lasted for hundreds of years, right? So Cervantes is going to write the story of Don Quixote, right? Don Quixote being a wealthy, much, much older man who is reminiscing and romanticizing the ideas of the Middle Ages, right? Of knights and of their chivalry, and actually trying to bring back to the forefront the ideas, the old gone ideas of the past, right? Which is why he's embodied as a much older man, right? And in one famous part of the story, he actually charges at a windmill thinking it's a giant, which is absolutely hilarious. He actually does most of his journey with his very small sidekick named Sancho Panza, all right? So, who is usually supposed to always be his, the ego in a sense of trying to be like, hey, Don, I don't think you should do that, right? Like trying to tell him not to do certain things. And the description of Don Quixote's library is one of my favorite literary moments because I want one. I want a library that big, right? Big oak shelves and just floor to ceiling. Ugh, it'd be great, right? But so, Don Quixote, Greco, Cervantes, right? The imagery of the golden age of literature and art during the growth of the Spanish Empire. But even though they've got good art and literature going on, Spain is going to be drastically weakened, right? So, 3 big fat reasons why. The Dutch, inflation, and also things becoming outlandishly expensive. Now, some of you are like, wait, don't inflation and that go together? Well, give me a second, all right? So let's start with the inflation one. So first of all, inflation is when money is going to be rapidly losing its value, right? Now, what this was caused by was the fact that there were 2 people no longer involved in the society of Spain, right? Or 3 people, actually. Or 2 people. Yeah, 2 people on one big thing. So Jews and Muslims, due to the connection of Spain to the very, very authoritative Catholic Church at the time, due to that connection, had ushered in before Philip II, before like Isabella and Ferdinand, the Spanish Inquisition, right? And in the Spanish Inquisition, they attempted to try and dispel all non-Christian Catholics, right? Mainly targeting Jews and Muslims. Now, in the Spanish Inquisition was also meant to try and convert them as well, which led to these new people called conversos, right? And the conversos would sometimes be hunted down and accused of still being their faith and tortured and things like that. But there's going to be a mass immigration of Jews and Muslims out of Spain, right? Which is going to affect their market because when they left, a large part of their economy went with them because there were only certain jobs that Jews and Muslims were allowed to have in Spain. Money lender, peddler, certain jobs that were very important, but not every Spanish citizen did, right? So when that leaves, that sector of economy actually went with them, right? So also, all of the silver and the gold being brought in from the colonies at the time caused rampant inflation, absolutely rampant inflation, which is going to lead to the devaluing of hard labor, and it's going to lead to the devaluing of like the working class of society, leading to a dramatic economic downfall of Spain, right? So the Dutch are also going to revolt, which caused a huge issue because they were such a money growth sector of the entire Holy Roman Empire. They invented the stock market, for crying out loud. They had the East India Company, right? Like, so when they revolt against Spain, with the help of England, this caused massive Spanish debt, leading to, like, of course, this big thing called the Union of Utrecht and like several other different ideas. But the Dutch are going to revolt, trying to banish the Spain out of their area, and they're going to eventually become independent a little bit later on. But Philip II will eventually lose control of them, right? So causing massive Spanish debt. So I hope you guys have a great rest of your evening. Have a great rest of your weekend. I will see you guys tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed it.